June 6, 1944, 4:30 hours, Omaha Beach. The water turns red before it reaches the sand. From his position overlooking the shoreline, a German machine gunner watches wave after wave of American soldiers fall. At a certain point, he stops aiming. He simply traverses the weapon mechanically, letting the machine do the work. Years later, in a letter he never sent, he would struggle to describe what he had seen. "They came at us with American courage and British cunning." That phrase appears again and again in German after-action reports from Normandy. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly. Different units, different officers, all reaching for the same explanation. They were killing American soldiers, yet the operation unfolding before them showed a level of planning that German intelligence did not associate with American strategic doctrine at the time. Here is what most people know about D-Day. Eisenhower commanded it. American troops stormed Omaha Beach. American industry and manpower carried out the largest amphibious invasion in history. It is remembered as the defining moment of American military power. But here is what German intelligence understood by June 7, 1944. This wasn't just an American victory. It was an Allied success, and much of its strategic planning happened in Britain. The deception campaigns, the logistics framework, the technological innovations, and the overall structure of Operation Overlord had been designed and coordinated months earlier from planning centers in Britain, many of them operating from secure facilities beneath London. This is not revisionism. This is drawn directly from German military assessments compiled during and after the invasion. Yet over time, much of that planning story faded from popular memory. Consider how D-Day has been portrayed for decades. Saving Private Ryan dedicates nearly half an hour to Omaha Beach, an unforgettable depiction of American sacrifice, American soldiers, American officers, American flags, but not a single scene shows the British planning staff who spent more than a year designing the operation those soldiers were carrying out. Band of Brothers spans 10 episodes. The planning of the invasion appears briefly, reduced to a short montage of Eisenhower studying maps. This was not an accident of storytelling. It was a narrative focus that gradually reshaped public memory. The German commanders noticed the difference immediately. General Major Wilhelm Richter, responsible for defending Sword Beach, wrote in his post-invasion analysis that the assault was unmistakably British in concept, layered deception, specialized equipment, methodical timing, executed by predominantly American forces. That phrasing mattered. He did not describe American planning carried out by American troops. He described American forces executing a British-designed plan. And that leads to the figure who shaped the invasion long before the first soldier stepped onto the sand. Lieutenant General Frederick Morgan, Chief of Staff to the Supreme Allied Commander, designate, began drafting the framework of Overlord in early 1943, nearly a year before Eisenhower arrived in Europe. Working from an underground planning complex in London, Morgan and his predominantly British staff calculated tides, selected landing zones, mapped supply flows, and designed the deception operations meant to mislead German defenses. The Mulberry Harbors, the Pluto fuel pipeline beneath the channel, the specialized armored vehicles designed to survive beach obstacles, all conceived and developed in Britain. When the landings came, American soldiers carried out the mission with extraordinary courage, but the plan they were executing had been built long before, far from the beaches of Normandy. So why don't you know any of this? Oberst Fritz Gellman, operations officer of the German 352nd Infantry Division, provided an answer after the war that explains it perfectly. When asked why German intelligence had focused so heavily on British invasion capabilities, his response was direct. "We knew the British were planning something unprecedented. Their intelligence services had deceived us repeatedly. We assumed American participation, but we never imagined the Americans would take operational credit. Even the enemy assumed the truth would be obvious, but it wasn't." By 1946, the narrative was already shifting. American troops had done most of the fighting. American industry had supplied most of the equipment. Newsreels showed American flags on French soil. Slowly, the British contribution, the planning, the deception, the innovation, was reduced to a footnote. Then a whisper, then silence. March 1943. Norfolk House, St. James's Square, London. Lieutenant General Frederick Morgan sits in an office that officially does not exist. His orders from the combined chiefs of staff are brief and vague. Prepare for the invasion of Northwest Europe in 1944. No troops assigned, no date set, no beaches selected, just one instruction: make it possible. Morgan does something remarkable. He does not plan an American invasion. He designs a British strategic framework that American forces can execute. German intelligence notices immediately. March 1943. British planning staff expanding rapidly. Cossack organization estimated at over 400 officers. American liaison presence minimal. May 1943. Cossack strength grows to 750 personnel. Composition remains predominantly British. American strategic input appears limited, largely logistical. September 1943. The planning apparatus exceeds 1,100 officers. British dominance of strategic planning is absolute. The Germans were counting. Month by month, they tracked the growth of Morgan's organization. They understood who was actually designing the invasion. What makes Morgan's achievement extraordinary is this: he was not planning for British troops. He understood that by 1944, the Americans would provide most of the manpower. So he designed an invasion British minds conceived, but American forces would execute. A plan so detailed, so comprehensive, that when Eisenhower arrived 9 months later, he changed almost nothing. The original Cossack plan specified multi-division assaults across multiple beach sectors, airborne flanking operations, deception campaigns to pin German reserves, specialized armored vehicles to overcome beach obstacles, artificial harbors because no port could be captured intact, and an underwater pipeline to supply fuel across the channel. Eisenhower's modification was limited. He expanded the assault from 3 divisions to 5. That was it. Everything else, the concept, the beaches, the deception, the technology, remained intact. German General Günther Blumentritt, Chief of Staff to Field Marshal von Rundstedt, confirmed this after the war. The invasion, he testified, bore all the hallmarks of British strategic design. We expected an invasion. We did not expect such Byzantine complexity. That phrase comes from a German general describing the planning behind D-Day. Not American planning, British. Byzantine complexity was how German commanders explained what they faced: layered deception, precise timing, and planning that extended far beyond the landing itself. Let's look at 3 specific ways British planning shaped every element of Operation Overlord. Example 1. Beach selection. Morgan's staff analyzed the entire European coastline, from southern Belgium to northern France. They studied beach gradients, tidal patterns, underwater obstacles, German fortifications, and inland terrain. Normandy was not chosen because it was closest to England. It was chosen because it was defensible after the landing. The terrain allowed rapid expansion inland. The Cotentin Peninsula made it possible to isolate Cherbourg. The Bocage countryside would slow German armored counterattacks. This was British strategic thinking, planning not just for the landing, but for the critical 48 hours after it. Example 2. Timing. June 5th, 6th, or 7th, 1944. Only 3 possible days. Why so few? Because the invasion required spring tides to maximize landing areas, moonlight for airborne operations, a low tide at first light to expose beach obstacles, and dawn conditions suitable for naval bombardment accuracy. That precise combination occurs only a few days each month between May and September. Morgan's staff calculated this in 1943. They handed Eisenhower a calendar. He did not invent the date. He selected one from British calculations. Example 3. Deception. Operation Fortitude, the plan to convince Hitler the invasion would strike Pas-de-Calais, was entirely British. It was run by the 20 Committee, the British double-cross system, which controlled every German spy operating in Britain, not most of them, all of them. Through these agents, British intelligence fed German command a completely fictional invasion narrative. German records confirm the effect. On June 6th, German commanders believed Normandy was a diversion and that the main assault would come at Calais within weeks. As a result, 15 German divisions remained tied down there for more than 40 days after D-Day. That delay saved the invasion. Operation Fortitude was not commanded by an American officer. It was overseen by British intelligence leadership, with British deception controllers managing British double agents under MI5. Every layer of the deception was British. If you want the full story, consider subscribing. Because what comes next is how British technology, not American production alone, made the landings survivable. June 6, 1944, 7:45 hours, Gold Beach. From his position overlooking the shoreline, German artillery officer Wilhelm Hartung watches something emerge from the sea that should not exist. A tank. But not the kind he recognizes. Its tracks churn through the water. A canvas screen surrounds the hull. It reaches the beach, drops the screen, and opens fire. Less than 30 seconds from water to full combat effectiveness. In his after-action report, Hartung struggles to describe what he saw. Enemy deployed swimming tanks of unknown design. Extremely effective. The Germans had no word for what they were witnessing because they had never conceived of it. The DD tank, duplex drive, was an amphibious modification of the Sherman and Churchill tanks, equipped with flotation screens and propellers. It was a British invention, designed in 1941 by engineer Nicholas Straussler, refined by Britain's 79th Armoured Division, tested in British waters, and deployed according to British doctrine. The Americans used some of them, the British designed them, and the DD tanks were only the beginning. What followed was a technological shock the Germans would later describe as overwhelming. They called it Hobart's Funnies, named after Major General Percy Hobart, the British commander responsible for their development. Specialized armored vehicles designed for a single purpose, to break fortified beaches. Crab tanks with rotating chains detonated mines ahead of advancing troops. Crocodile tanks used flamethrowers capable of reaching bunkers over 100 yards away. VRE assault vehicles fired massive petard mortars to shatter reinforced concrete defenses. Bobbin tanks laid heavy matting across soft sand so vehicles could advance without sinking. 5 specialized armored systems, all British, all deployed on D-Day. From the German perspective, the effect was immediate. Oberst Eduard Betz of the 352nd Artillery Regiment later wrote that British landing sectors employed equipment the Germans had never encountered. Obstacles designed to delay an assault for hours were overcome in minutes. But what the Germans could see was only part of the story. What they could not see was even more significant: the Mulberry harbors. British planners knew no major port could be captured intact. German doctrine required their destruction, so Britain built its own ports. 2 artificial harbors were constructed, towed across the channel and assembled off the Normandy coast. Massive concrete caissons formed breakwaters. Floating roadways adjusted with the tide. Entire port facilities appeared where none had existed. All designed by British engineers, built in British shipyards, towed by British vessels. The American Mulberry at Omaha was destroyed by a storm on June 19th. The British Mulberry at Gold Beach continued operating, ultimately handling nearly 40% of all Allied supplies for months. German General Wilhelm Richter later admitted the concept had been beyond anything German planners imagined possible. And then there was Pluto, the pipeline under the ocean. A fuel pipeline laid along the seabed from southern England to France. Because armies run on fuel, and fuel ships are vulnerable. It was a British concept, executed by British engineers, and used by Allied forces once ashore. What is remarkable is not that these innovations existed. It is that the Germans expected them. German intelligence assessments consistently acknowledged British superiority in engineering and technical problem-solving. They did not expect American innovation at this level. They expected British solutions, and on D-Day, that expectation was confirmed. What truly surprised German commanders was not British innovation alone, but American troops using British-designed equipment with precision. From the recovered diary of General Major Dietrich Kreis of the 352nd Infantry Division, killed on June 6, 1944, comes a final assessment. Written as the invasion unfolded, it notes that American troops displayed unexpected technical sophistication in equipment and tactics, strongly suggesting British influence. That observation matters. It is a German officer facing defeat, concluding that what he was witnessing was British planning executed with American courage. Now consider the deception that made all of this possible. May 1944, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel inspects defenses along the coast, more than 150 miles from where the invasion will actually take place. He is confident this is the landing site. He is completely wrong, and he is wrong because British intelligence has spent 18 months ensuring he would be. Operation Fortitude remains the most successful deception campaign in military history, not because it fooled some German commanders, but because it fooled all of them, including their most capable generals, for weeks after D-Day. Here is what German High Command believed on June 5, 1944. The main invasion would strike Pas-de-Calais in late June or early July. It would be commanded by General George Patton, leading the 1st United States Army Group, FUSAG. The force supposedly consisted of 11 divisions stationed in southeastern England. Any landing in Normandy would be a diversion. Every part of that assessment was false. FUSAG did not exist. Patton commanded no such force. There were no 11 divisions preparing in southeastern England, but German command believed it because British counterintelligence made them believe it. By 1944, MI5 controlled every German agent operating in Britain. Not most of them, all of them. Each had been identified, captured, turned, and fed controlled information back to Berlin. The most effective of these was codenamed Garbo. Juan Pujol Garcia, a Spanish double agent, operated under British handler Tomas Harris. Between 1942 and 1944, Garbo sent over 300 detailed intelligence reports to German command. All of it fabricated, all of it trusted. On June 9, 1944, 3 days after D-Day, Garbo reported that Normandy was merely a diversion and that the real invasion at Pas-de-Calais would occur within weeks. Berlin believed him. As a result, 15 German divisions remained pinned at Calais well into July, divisions that never reached Normandy. German General Alfred Jodl later testified that Garbo's intelligence was rated at the highest level of reliability and that strategic decisions were based directly on his reports. But Garbo was only one element. British deception extended across every domain. Phantom radio traffic simulated entire army formations. Fake logistics requests and operational orders were broadcast for German interception. Inflatable tanks, dummy aircraft, and false landing craft were positioned where German reconnaissance flights could photograph them. Controlled leaks were passed through diplomatic channels, exploiting German sources in neutral embassies. The Germans intercepted everything. They mapped phantom divisions. They tracked movements that never existed. And they believed it all, because British intelligence had engineered not just a deception, but a complete alternate reality. 3 levels of deception, all coordinated, all British. The Germans never suspected a thing. Captured German documents repeatedly confirmed what they believed were independent sources reporting Allied invasion preparations in southeastern England. In reality, none of those sources were independent, not one. Every single one was under British control. That is the real genius of Operation Fortitude. The British did not just deceive the Germans about where the invasion would happen, they deceived them about when. They made German High Command believe Normandy happened too early to be the real invasion. Watch the progression through German High Command diaries. June 6th. Normandy landings may be diversionary. Maintain readiness at Pas-de-Calais. June 10th. Normandy forces insufficient for main effort. Principal assault still expected elsewhere. June 18th. Weather patterns and troop dispositions suggest Calais remains the primary objective. June 29th. Assessment increasingly uncertain. Normandy forces continue expanding. 23 days after D-Day, they still were not sure. General Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of Armored Troops, later testified that British deception achieved what German command had believed impossible: strategic paralysis of the mobile reserve. Strategic paralysis. Germany's best armored commander admitting British intelligence rendered him unable to act. The scale of this becomes clear when you look at the numbers. On June 6th, the Allies landed approximately 156,000 troops in Normandy. Germany had roughly 850,000 troops in France. Nearly 450,000 of them were positioned north of the Seine, defending against an invasion that was never coming. British deception kept nearly half of Germany's forces in France out of the decisive battle for more than 6 weeks. And the cost was remarkably small. Operation Fortitude employed roughly 1,200 British intelligence officers, about 40 double agents, and an uncounted number of technical specialists. The American contribution consisted primarily of liaison staff. Every deception mechanism, every false signal, every controlled agent was British. If you are starting to understand how completely American memory absorbed British strategic genius, keep watching. Because what matters most is what the Germans themselves thought after the war was over. Nuremberg. Allied interrogation rooms. The fighting has ended. The cameras are off. German generals are being questioned for historical records. There is no propaganda value left. No reason to exaggerate, just professional officers trying to explain what happened. And when they talk about D-Day, they talk about Britain. General Alfred Jodl, Chief of Operations Staff of OKW, is asked what surprised him most about the Normandy invasion. His answer is direct: the thoroughness of British planning. Every element worked with a precision he did not expect from a combined Allied operation. Not American planning. British planning. General Major Walter Warlimont, Deputy Chief of Operations at OKW, reached the same conclusion. The invasion, he said, bore British hallmarks throughout: deception, technical innovation, and methodical timing. American execution was brave, but it clearly followed British design. This is a German general under oath explaining what he witnessed, but the most devastating assessment comes from the men who actually fought on the beaches. General Hans Speidel, Rommel's chief of staff, wrote in his post-war memoir, "We prepared to fight Americans. Instead, we encountered British strategic planning combined with American material strength. Against that combination, we had no answer." No answer. Germany's most experienced defensive commanders admitting British planning broke them. Now look at the pattern across German testimony. 3 generals, 3 divisions, 3 beaches, all saying the same thing. General Major Wilhelm Richter of the 716th Infantry Division at Sword Beach described the assault as displaying unmistakable British operational doctrine, specialized armor, precise timing, and integrated fire support. He explicitly rejected the idea that this was American improvisation. Oberst Fritz Gellman of the 352nd Infantry Division at Omaha Beach reached the same conclusion. The planning, he wrote, was clearly British. The courage was clearly American. The combination was lethal. General Major Edgar Feuchtinger of the 21st Panzer Division was equally direct. British deception kept German forces paralyzed. British technology overcame prepared defenses. British planning made the impossible routine. 3 officers, 3 sectors, 1 conclusion: British planning, American execution. What makes this remarkable is not the consistency. It is how long these assessments remained invisible. Classified reports, restricted memoirs, interrogation transcripts, material the American public never saw. The official histories written after the war, largely by American authors, focused on American soldiers, American generals, and American sacrifice. And that sacrifice was real. Omaha Beach was an American bloodbath, thousands of casualties in hours. American courage was unquestionable. But courage does not plan an invasion. Courage does not design specialized armor. Courage does not run deception operations that paralyze an entire army group. British minds did that. German generals recognized it immediately. The American public never learned it, and the reason was structural. The transfer of credit happened in phases. Phase 1, the immediate post-war years, 1945 to 1950. American newsreels dominated. American soldiers came home. The narrative became American victory. British contributions were acknowledged, but not emphasized. That was natural. Every nation celebrates its own. Phase 2, the Hollywood era, roughly 1950 to 2000. Films like The Longest Day, Saving Private Ryan, and Band of Brothers shaped global memory. American faces, American command, American heroism filled the screen. Planning scenes were minimized. British commanders quietly disappeared. Eisenhower became the architect rather than the executor. Phase 3, cultural saturation. From 2000 onward, the American narrative became so complete that even suggesting British primacy began to sound like revisionism. But it isn't revision, it is German testimony. Admiral Friedrich Ruge, Rommel's naval advisor, wrote in his 1970 memoir that the invasion bore unmistakably British characteristics in conception and execution. What surprised him was not American bravery, but British strategic mastery operating at a scale Germany could not counter. And that is the story that was never fully told. I have watched with some amusement as American historians claim credit for planning that was demonstrably British. Perhaps this is how victors rewrite history. That line was written by a German admiral more than 35 years after the war. not as propaganda, not under interrogation, but as an observation of how the narrative had shifted. And here is the question that breaks everything open. Why would the Germans lie about this? What possible reason would German generals have to exaggerate British capability and diminish American planning? There is none. They were not praising their enemy. They were explaining their defeat, and they explained it by crediting the nation that actually planned it. Britain. Now consider what happened next. Lieutenant General Frederick Morgan, the man who designed the framework of D-Day, died in 1967. His obituary in the New York Times was 8 paragraphs long. 8. The architect of the most complex military operation in modern history received less space than routine celebrity news. Major General Percy Hobart, who created the specialized armored vehicles that made the beaches survivable, died in 1957. He does not appear in a single American D-Day film, not one frame. Admiral Bertram Ramsay, who commanded the naval operation, nearly 7,000 ships, the largest armada ever assembled, died in a plane crash in January 1945. His name appears in virtually no American documentaries about D-Day. Lieutenant Colonel John Bevan, who ran Operation Fortitude, the deception that paralyzed German reserves, died in 1978. Ask 100 Americans who planned the D-Day deception. Perhaps 2 have heard his name. These men planned everything, and history forgot them. But the Germans did not. From General Alfred Jodel's interrogation records, the Kozak Plan anticipated German responses before they occurred. It was strategic planning of the highest order. Morgan, he said, was not merely competent, he was brilliant. From General Major Wilhelm Richter's report on Percy Hobart's armored vehicles, the specialized equipment overcame defenses the Germans believed impregnable. Whoever designed them, Richter admitted, understood defensive warfare better than Germany did, better than the nation that invented Blitzkrieg. From Admiral Friedrich Ruge's memoir on Bertram Ramsay, the naval operation was conducted with such precision that German command believed it impossible for so many vessels to be coordinated so effectively. Ramsay's achievement, he wrote, seemed almost superhuman. And from declassified Abwehr files released in 1972 regarding John Bevan's deception work, German intelligence concluded that the sophistication of the operation implied an intelligence apparatus far superior to their own, Germany's legendary intelligence service admitting British superiority. This is not revisionism. This is enemy testimony. American courage was real. American sacrifice was immense. American industry was decisive. None of that is in question. But courage does not design invasions. Courage does not engineer technology. Courage does not orchestrate deception on a continental scale. British planning did. The Germans knew it. The planners lived it. And history for decades chose not to tell it. These men deserved monuments. They received footnotes. And the man who replaced them in public memory was Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower was a great general, make no mistake, but he did not plan D-Day. He arrived in Europe 9 months after the operational plan was already complete and changed almost nothing. That is not an accusation. It is documented fact. Here is Eisenhower's actual contribution to D-Day planning, described by his own Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Walter Bedell Smith. Eisenhower's greatest contribution was maintaining Allied unity and political consensus. Those were vital responsibilities, essential even, but they were not operational planning. Hollywood, however, needed an architect, and Eisenhower fit perfectly. American, charismatic, visible. Frederick Morgan did not. So Eisenhower became the planner, and Morgan disappeared. Watch the progression. The Longest Day, 1962. Morgan appears briefly. One scene, roughly 2 minutes. No explanation of his role. Saving Private Ryan, 1998. Morgan does not appear at all. Eisenhower is shown directing the invasion. Band of Brothers, 2001. Morgan's name is never spoken, not once, across 10 episodes. This was not malicious deception by filmmakers. It was something more powerful. Narrative momentum. By then, the American version of D-Day was so complete that British planners no longer existed in the story. And here is how you know this was not oversight. The British knew their contribution. British-produced films and histories consistently acknowledged British planning. The Longest Day itself, based on Cornelius Ryan's work, originally included British perspectives. But British films do not dominate global culture. American films do. So the world learned the American version. 3 generations grew up believing America planned D-Day. The Germans knew better. General Günther Blumentritt wrote in 1952 that historical accuracy required acknowledging Operation Overlord was conceived, designed, and largely orchestrated by British minds. American courage and resources executed it magnificently, but the architecture was British. That is a German general, 7 years after defeat, insisting Britain receive credit. That alone should end the argument. And D-Day was not an anomaly. It was a pattern. Let me show you what happened next. North Africa, Operation Torch, November 1942. The American narrative calls it the first major American offensive of the war. Eisenhower's debut, American forces landing in Morocco and Algeria. German assessment tells a different story. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring testified after the war that the operation bore unmistakable signs of British strategic planning, simultaneous multi-point landings, political coordination with Vichy French commanders, and naval deception operations. So who planned Torch? British Combined Operations Headquarters, under Admiral Louis Mountbatten. Once again, British planning. Once again, American execution. Once again, history remembered only one side. And this pattern repeats. The Americans executed it. The British designed it. Sicily, Operation Husky, July 1943. The American narrative calls it a defining moment, the U.S. 7th Army racing across Sicily. German assessments tell a different story. General Oberst Hans Valentin Hube wrote that the invasion plan showed unmistakable British characteristics: attention to beach gradients, naval gunfire coordination, airborne integration, and methodical sequencing. American tactical improvisation was effective, but the framework was British. Husky was planned by British Force 141 under General Harold Alexander. General Patton commanded American troops executing a British-designed plan. Then, the Rhineland. Operation Plunder, March 1945. The American story remembers it as the final crossing of the Rhine. German assessments again point elsewhere. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring described the crossing as a model of British operational planning, feint attacks, smoke screens, specialized engineering units, and methodical artillery preparation. Plunder was planned by the British 21st Army Group under Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery. The American 9th Army participated. Britain planned it. 4 major operations, 4 celebrated American victories, 4 British plans. The pattern is absolute, and the Germans documented it every time. Here is why this transfer of credit worked so completely. American soldiers bled in all of these operations. American families lost sons on every beach, in every landing, in every river crossing. When American filmmakers told stories about American sacrifice, they were not lying about the sacrifice. They were erasing the British minds that made that sacrifice meaningful by turning courage into victory instead of disaster. Compare German assessments. British planned operations, Torch, Husky, Overlord, Plunder, are described as consistent, methodical, technically sophisticated, layered with deception, and supported by specialized equipment. American planned operations, Market Garden, the Hurtgen Forest, are described as brave but predictable, costly, and insufficiently planned. The Germans could tell the difference. They knew which operations carried British planning and which did not. The ones with British planning succeeded. The ones without it became bloodbaths. American culture never learned this because American culture consumed American films showing American generals planning American victories. The theft was cultural, not factual. The facts were always there, in German testimony, British planning documents, and operational records. But culture chose the simpler story. America saved the world. The reality is more complex. Britain saved America from planning disasters that would have killed far more Americans. Germany knew it. Britain knew it. America forgot it. June 6, 1944, 2200 hours. Rommel's headquarters. The Desert Fox sits in silence reading reports. His defensive system, 2 years of concrete, wire, mines, and artillery, has not been penetrated. It has been breached. Allied forces are already 6 miles inland. Rommel writes a single line in his diary. The enemy has executed a plan of extraordinary completeness. Extraordinary completeness. from a general who fought the British for years and understood their planning capability intimately. Not American improvisation. Extraordinary completeness. That is what this story has shown. D-Day, America's greatest victory, was built on British planning. The deception that paralyzed German reserves was British. The specialized armor that survived the beaches was British. The artificial harbors that supplied the advance were British. The 18 months of detailed planning before Eisenhower arrived were British. The courage, the blood, the sacrifice. That was American. Absolutely American. No one diminishes what those soldiers did stepping off landing craft into machine gun fire. But courage without planning is only death. British planning turned American courage into victory. The Germans knew it. Every diary, every interrogation, every assessment says the same thing. British planning, American execution, Allied victory. So why don't you know this? Because cultural power writes history. By 1950, America controlled Hollywood, publishing, television, and universities. American institutions told American stories to American audiences. British planning became a footnote, then a whisper, then silence. The German testimonies remained, sealed in archives, declassified slowly, and largely ignored. Now you have a choice. You can believe the Hollywood version, that America planned and executed its greatest victory. Or you can believe the enemy, the men who fought the plan, analyzed it professionally, and had no reason to inflate British capability. When they say British brilliance made D-Day possible, they had no agenda. They were explaining their defeat, and they explained it by crediting the nation that actually planned it. If this changed how you see World War II, subscribe, like, and share this video, and tell us your thoughts in the comments. There are dozens more operations where British planning created victories later remembered as purely American, and we will show them all, using the voices Hollywood ignored, the Germans who fought against them. The truth isn't in the films you watched. It's in the testimonies of the men who lost, and they all say the same thing. British minds, American courage, Allied victory. But only one of those ever made it into the documentaries.